Ooh, ah, Shannon's Lumber Industry Update.
Welcome back to the Lumber Industry Update. Today I have a treat. I've got a guest with me. I have Niles Kreck of Maine Urban Timber. Hello, Niles.
Well, hi, how we doing?
I'm doing quite well. Those of you who are maybe hand tool school students probably know Niles. That's actually how I got to know Niles. Well, Niles was actually a member of the school, but he started restoring saws. He learned to sharpen them. I believe Matt Cianci was the one who taught you how to sharpen.
Yep.
And Niles and I actually hooked up one time when I was up in Maine visiting my in-laws and filmed a little how to sharpen saws. And he started restoring saws for hand tool school members, and Kennebec Saws was born. And then kind of started playing around with this idea of reclaiming lumber, and has built a Cremona special bandsaw mill and is now salvaging logs and turning them into lumber. So I guess that's the first thing. It's kind of an interesting leap from saw restoration to lumber guy. As I understand it, Kennebec Saws is still a thing, but we'll just kind of call it on hold as we're, as you have quickly discovered, there's still only 24 hours in the day. No matter how many things you take on, we don't get any more hours. So those of you who
just sleep less, so you got to try to figure something out.
I tried that for a couple of years, and it does work. It does give you some more hours, but it's not particularly sustainable. You start to hallucinate.
Get a little tired.
Yeah. After about 4 or 5 days of working straight through, bad things happen. So I don't think I'm telling you that anything, because let's jump into Niles' origin story. But you are a state trooper, are you not?
Oh, I actually was. So I now work for the Attorney General's office in Maine. But I was for almost 10 years with the Maine State Police. Right. So you've
been through the training and the deprivation and throwing you out in the woods for a while, right? And no sleep.
Yeah, it's no sleep comes once in a while. But once in a while it doesn't. So kind of well acclimated to that.
So that's interesting. I knew you had changed jobs, but for some reason I thought it was like a division of the Maine State Police. So you are...
No, it's pretty close. I mean, law enforcement in Maine's pretty small anyway, but it's just it's a very small office. Only a couple different detectives there, but it's a different branch. So, but still in law enforcement.
So I bring that up because, I work in the lumber industry, and the lumber industry has a... reputation, shall we say, of you talk to any woodworker and they've got 3 stories of how they were ripped off by their lumber guy. Well, Niles is in law enforcement, has spent years in law enforcement. He's an honest guy who upholds the law. So if you want an honest lumber guy, go to a guy who used to be a state trooper and is now selling lumber. There's the magic combination there. So I also can imagine when you find your logs, however, we'll get to that in a little bit. I can kind of imagine like the mirror aviator glasses as you walk along the side of the log and do that best state trooper. You know how fast you were going, ma'am? That type of thing. You know what kind of figure you got in there.
How big this log is? Move along.
Move along. Nice. Yes. Yeah. He's a pro, guys. He's got the lingo down. So what was give me the origin story. How did you end up deciding I'm going to start harvesting logs? Tell me about that.
Well, it's always kind of, you mentioned a strange jump from Kennebec Saws. Oh, and I do want to back up real quick. So it is Maine Urban Timber Company. I add the company to the end because there is a Maine Urban Timber in Maine that's different than me. So I just want to put that out there for clarification.
Sure. MaineUrbanTimberCo.com if anybody's curious.
Yeah, Maine Urban Timber Company. Yep. Maine Urban Timber Co. So you got to have that company, otherwise it's not me. So anyway, but when you made a mention about starting to jump from saws into lumber, I did the saws because I was doing woodworking and I wanted to make a couple extra bucks to buy a couple extra tools here and there, and then the saws kind of took over as the full time thing pretty much. So then I was getting away from woodworking again. Right. So then that went on for a couple of years, and now. Basically, it all kind of this side got born out of a friend and I, which basically now my business partner, wanted to build a bandsaw mill, just kind of to putz around at his place. He has a good amount of acreage and decent amount of trees. And so we got the Matt Cremona mill plans. And after graduating an adult education course on welding, which is my only background in welding, we started having at it. We actually downsized it because our mill is 45 inches, which we cut from Cremona's mill, because we figured, why would we ever need a log that big? So just kind of some foreshadowing. And so we built that mill and built it to specs of 45 inches, 45-inch log. And we get to the point about halfway through, and I just started looking. I said, hey, you start seeing what Matt Cremona's doing, and other people on social media are doing. Like, this is pretty cool. It seems pretty popular. So as we got talking about doing the urban lumber, or any kind of lumber in general, outside of just doing like a small solar kiln for some pine, and like I said, just kind of messing around just to do stuff. We started talking about the fact, it's like, well, seems to be a market, and very popular now. So we have a wide cut mill, or at least what we thought was a pretty wide cut mill, and realized that we have to dry it. So we started looking around at the kiln options, and that the solar kiln of the original idea, that's not really going to work for hardwood lumber. So it got to the point where we started looking at different vacuum kilns that exist, and even traditional dehumidification kilns. And we decided to kind of go all in and get an iDry kiln, vacuum kiln, the iDry standard. And basically, once we had our mill operational, we got ourselves actually found on Craigslist, somebody had basically an urban wood trailer, the log trailer. You can, just like Matt Cremona has, you got the arc on the back, and use a big old fulcrum, pull everything up. We bought that. And the first log we ended up picking up was a 53-inch silver maple. That was almost 5,000 pounds. And at the time I had this like 1990 F-150, which I never intended to pull anything like that. And we put that on the back of that thing, and I'm surprised it didn't snap in half on us. So that was our first log. We were so
Not
big
to mention,
we couldn't cut it.
5 inches larger than your capacity. For those who are paying attention, the first log was too big. Oh, that's great. I've got Matt's bandsaw mill plans. His is what, 66, 68?
Yeah, I think so. It's somewhere close to 6 feet. Yep. Yeah. So had we built it to spec, had I ever planned ahead a little bit further, it would be no issue. But
45 sounds pretty big, though. I mean, I don't think anyone will blame you for that. I mean, that's
it's still a big log, but now we have no issue finding logs that are significantly larger than that. Yeah. So basically, we realized. My business partner, we work well together because we're exact opposites. I'm the guy that comes up with 300 ideas a minute, and he tells me which ones are terrible, which is majority of them. And then there's that one. He's like, that's a pretty good one, and then we kind of move on from there. And but we end up renting a space in an old mill in Gardner, Maine. We moved the kiln, the iDry kiln, into there, and basically it's just what seemed like a big space that was like pretty much completely run down on the inside. The owner hadn't used it for 20, 30 years, just like junk storage. It was wet, just because no one used it. And the rest of the mill is very nice, but it was just kind of left alone. So we cleaned it all up, got it ready, ran some wiring, and started drying some wood. So but it's just fun learning process. We're on our probably fourth load now, month and a half-ish or so, give or take on the load, depending. Definitely ruined some nice wood, trying to dry it, not quite knowing what you're doing, learning as you go. But it's a fun process, and people really like it. So we pretty much sell out everything we have. We're one of the few people in Maine that not only has wide cut hardwood lumber, but also is kiln dried. And there's very few people that kiln dry their slabs to begin with. And if they do, they're usually your traditional, 30 inches or less. So it's kind of a niche market for us.
Sure.
So, and then with the last month or so, we've realized, that the mill that we build is a nice mill, but it's not powered. So it's heavy. There's definitely no, I'll give Matt credit. He built that thing strong, designed it very strong. So we ended up deciding to buy a smaller mill from a company in Maine called Thomas Mill. So that way your traditional size logs are more easily manageable, and so we can actually start doing some more custom cutting. And we also bought a Lucas mill. So now we can cut up to the 76-inch log.
That's a big
Not saying
one, yeah.
we'll ever get that big. I can't even dry that, but we picked up some red oak from a local university that's over 60 inches wide. And averages 4 feet. The majority of the length of the wood. So it's so we have pretty much majority of what we have now, and keep us busy and keep us drying some wood.
Wow. Okay. Lots to unpack from all that. Where to start? Well, first of all, give me the timeline from deciding you were going to build the Cremona mill to now. Because I remember watching this on Instagram, and it seemed like, there are fits and starts like every project. You're flying 1 minute and then nothing happens for a week. But when did you start building the mill? How long ago was that?
The mill process took 13 months for us to basically start the mill to stop. And I don't recall when we started. But it's, we really opened our company probably 4 or 5 months ago, really put a name to it and started saying, hey, we have a product,
Sure.
or we will shortly, is kind of how we started it. So that was kind of the process.
That kind of jives with my memory. Also interesting to hear, because one of my first questions was did you have any previous welding experience? And you kind of already answered that. So you just took a community college learning NX type course.
Yes, that was it.
That's pretty cool. What about your business partner?
Nope. He's the guy that when I finished welding something, but why'd you do it like that? And then I'd unweld it because I wasn't paying attention, which means you grind it out and cut it out, and then you start again. So he was the supervisor. It's like, yeah. It's hard to take two pieces of melted metal apart. So that's the ebb and flow of welding. And
I think that's particularly encouraging because I have those same plans, and I remember talking to Matt about I have no immediate plans to do this, but long term, yes, I want one. I don't have land, so a lot of other things have to happen first. I've got to buy a house with land that I could actually put it on, and have covenants that wouldn't get me thrown out of the neighborhood for trying to operate it. But I remember looking through it and thinking, man, I'm clueless when it comes to welding. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to need a whole lot of learning to get this. But it's particularly encouraging to hear, you were like me, didn't know which end actually you're supposed to point at the steel, that type of level of knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Literally zero knowledge. I've never welded, picked up a welder at all. So, and it was an 8-week course, 3 hours a week, and that was it. And
that's pretty cool.
It got you enough information to get things going.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, I remember Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy from Discovery, did a special about welding and how it's one of the highest paid jobs in America now because there are so few of them. So few certified, know what they're doing welders. And I think in the state of South Dakota, there were literally 2 in the entire state. And those guys were making $375,000 a year, working 30 hours a week. And they could just kind of pick and choose because they were in such demand. So, if nothing else, you've got that 8-week schooling that you can say, hey, I've actually been trained. You can always fall back on that. So the next question is, you downsized the capacity. Did you have to downsize anything else? Did you change the horsepower or was it the exact same mill, just narrower?
Yeah, just narrower. I didn't really change much. I mean, just, rather than a 55-inch centerpiece or 60-inch centerpiece, now it's 40 or 45 or 48, whatever it was. Okay. Just downsize a couple things. And, it's... Probably shouldn't have done that. So, but
well, you could always upsize it, I suppose. You'd have to change the bed itself, but
not doing that. That's not worth it. So we're all set up to where we are now. So yeah, I mean, it's for the cost difference and adding that foot of steel when we built it wouldn't have been bad. So, but now with the Lucas mill, it is what it is.
Sure.
So
sure.
we'll accept it as now having 3 mills and living with it.
That's tough. Having 3 mills. That's, you're going to find a use for it somewhere. And like you said, that Cremona mill is kind of built to last, so that's going to always be there. Always going to continue.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
So then the next question, you said that you looked into the solar kiln, but decided that wasn't going to work for hardwood. Where was the shortfall with the solar kiln that made you start looking elsewhere?
Well, because when you start looking at all that stuff, it was just basically us messing around at my friend's place. So we were in no rush, and most of the stuff he has is softwoods. So we never thought of it as a retail outlet, and that was one of the big things that we looked at doing, or why we did the vacuum kilns. I started looking into vacuum kilns because of the speed. The advertised speed of what they say you can do compared to, a solar kiln to a dehumidification kiln. And I have a friend who has a dehumidification kiln locally, and, he says he hasn't had the best of luck with thicker lumber. And, you still have, your year and a half, 2-year turnaround, whatever it might be, depending on wood species, everything else, and I just can imagine sinking that much money into it and saying, hey, I have some sweet red oak if you guys are interested in 2023.
That makes sense.
So,
I mean, certainly there's a capacity issue. The bigger you make that solar kiln, the harder it is to get that thing hot, because the sun's pretty damn hot, but, you got to heat up that space, and you have to worry about overcooking it.
Right.
That's a real issue. Dehumidification, the solar kiln is really a dehumidification kiln. It's just the power is coming from the sun.
Yeah.
It's the same principle. But I would just think that, I don't like drying. We've got, industrial dehumidification kilns, and we don't like anything above 12 quarter. We've done it, but, the only way to do it is really slow. And as a production environment, it's like, you've turned 7 kilns next door, and the 16 quarter stuff is still going. You're like, this is just killing me. Fortunately, we have 7 kilns, so the one next to it can turn 7 times, and the other 5 can turn 7 times while that one kiln is sitting there. But it's crazy, and the constant, in terms of a large industrial dehumidification kiln, the energy expense to keep that kiln running 24/7 for many, many months, and constantly injecting steam and reconditioning the wood, it's tough. These days, the vacuum kiln is really the only way to go for things 12 quarter and thicker. And you get to the really thick stuff, throwing in the RF, the radio frequency stuff, to the vacuum speeds it up more, but doesn't really. All it does is really speed things up, because essentially you're microwaving it. You're heating it from the inside out. So what is the capacity of your iDry kiln?
They say 2,000 board feet, and to be honest, I've never figured out, taking the wood out and then put it all together and figure out, kind of how many board feet are we getting in there. It's I will say that's definitely the tough part. It's like a game of Tetris every time you load that thing. Yeah. And every time you load it, you figure out a better way of okay, the next time, let's figure out how to not unload this thing 4 times just to get it loaded for a single use. Because we just keep ruining wood. We're making 10-foot boards into 6-foot boards, I should say.
2,000 board feet at a time.
Right. Yeah. That's. But like maple, it loves maple. I could take 12 quarter green maple, like just cut it, and we've done about a month, 5 weeks. Nice. It did 6 to 8%. So, and that's nice because we have a lot of maple.
And the key is it's a uniform 6 to 8%. Right?
Yeah.
When it comes out.
And, we use the Delmhorst, the big old probe meter, and so it's nice. So you could probably slow it down a little bit. They do advertise it's an inch a week. I think that's a little shy of what I can come up with and what other people I've talked to that have it throughout the country. But it's still pretty impressive what the machine does and what it can dry. So it's like I said, just learning. It's why
you said about a month for the maple. It likes the maple, and about
12 quarter maple. Yeah,
your cycle. Okay,
yep.
And that was my next question. What is your thickness there? So, 2,000 board feet's the volume. What are the actual linear dimensions? Because you said earlier about you've got this new log and it won't actually fit in the kiln. So what are the the square dimensions, I suppose.
Yeah, it's 13 feet deep from back to the front door, and the track, I think you do a little bit over 48 inches. They have a track, and they want, basically it's 60 inches. You could technically fit a 60-inch piece in there. But you know, the manual says you should do that because you're going to mess with the airflow. But I might not listen to manuals too often, so we kind of stack it as full as we can, and that might burn us a little bit and take a little bit longer to dry stuff and mess with the airflow a little bit. But you could technically put a 60-inch piece in. And then I think it's 56 inches or so from the rack, the push-in rack to the top. Okay. So, and that's the part that is you really got to plan ahead. You know, you see these pretty pictures of people like perfectly stacked logs that just happen to work out, and you know, and it just you try that sometimes and you realize, well, the top of one log is skinnier than the bottom of the one you want to put on top of it. So now your boards are gonna warp, as we learn when you don't support wood that well, and they all dry out as you know, it just bends down around the other wood below it. And like I said, now you make your 10-foot boards into 6-foot boards so you can get them flat and not have a 1/8-inch piece of wood when you're done. So have you
experimented with stickers to provide a little bit of beam strength when you have that instance where, you know, your typical sticker is going to be about 5/8 of an inch thick, and usually the I-beam is kind of the standard style. But if you were to upsize that sticker, the real reason I'm thinking about this is I'd be really hesitant to mess with stickers in a dehumidification kiln because of the amount of moisture that runs through and the tannins that leach from a thicker sticker. But because we're talking about a vacuum kiln here, I mean, it's airflow and sucking out the air. You're not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not injecting moisture at all, correct?
Nope. Yeah, not other than what's in there already, yeah.
Right. So it is a dry process, and you know, the moisture is being drawn out because you're lowering the boiling point. In other words, by changing the barometric pressure, you're lowering the boiling point. The same reason Sir Edmund Hillary had an ice cold cup of tea when he climbed Everest. You know, lovely, pip pip cheerio. Here's some freezing tea because the barometric pressure was so low. It's the same idea. You're causing the water in the wood to boil off, and the airflow is then evaporating it off. That's the same as a dehumidification kiln, but you're not injecting moisture. So what I wonder is if you could, rather than use stickers, you'll sacrifice a little bit of volume, but use bolsters, like a larger stick that's going to have its own strength to support that wider piece on top. I'm making this up. I haven't seen this done. No, I'm just wondering.
We actually did start doing that. So I basically milled out of 2x4s just for an easy product to grab, which now they're $7 a piece. So
I was going to say, it's not exactly cheap anymore.
Yeah, I might as well just go get some walnut or something. It's almost just as cheap. But it's I mean, basically we did just that because we had some beach a little while ago, those 10-foot beach, and you know we used traditional stickers. We have about 1-inch stickers, and we just put them out like a bunch of dopes, and it hung out over the edge. And you get those, you pull them out the first time, like, oh crap, and you see exactly what happened. It just bent over the side because the 1-inch sticker is not going to hold up the beach with the weight on top. Right. So basically we just built these 2x4, like these double 2x4 stickers, and milled them up so they're nice and square and flat. And so I just did them screwed them in two alongside each other and rotated it so that's the strongest orientation for the sticker, less likely to bow. And we've made a bunch of those. And something else we're kind of messing with, and iDry did on their website after I was looking at it. I want to take credit, even though they did. I just didn't know they're doing it. But they basically use extension extension springs. So you put a cargo strap around it, and then you have the springs, because we were using cargo straps to keep it tight. But that's good until like the first day it's drying. Then all of a sudden now they're loose because you're losing moisture content, and the wood shrinks. So now it's not tight anymore. So we wanted that spring tension. But then we found out another issue is the fact when you put a cargo strap over the load, that the last angle, the last side that the cargo strap's over, where you're strapping it down, it pulls that corner down. So it's not even equal pressure from one side, from the opposing side to the side you're strapping.
Right.
So
the ratchet side's always stronger.
Correct. So version 5.0 is now we bought some 1/4-inch tubing that we're going to run across the top and basically strap that across the top, 2 springs on both sides with straps. So that way when you pull us down, it just pulls straight down. And you have pressure with springs. So hopefully,
well, I mean, how do we solve this issue in the commercial industry? We put more wood in. And here's the unique nature of the slab market. But as you develop more logs, there's no reason that says that you have to all sell slabs. Well, you can't just sell boards. So you could get to a point where, hey, we've got, here's our marquee slabs. And as you assemble them, now you get to play Tetris and say, okay, now I need a 6-inch board to fit under here and a 4-inch board, and just start ripping, because then now you've got more lumber. Right now, you've just dried more lumber, and if you've stacked it tight enough so that you've got that, that perfect cube or polygon, whatever, you know what I mean, perfectly filling the volume of your kiln by plugging in little pieces here and there. That should solve it, should it not? I mean, that's how we do it in the dehumidification world.
It's the top ones though that they get a little squirrely because now they don't really have a ton of weight. In fact, I think you even commented on one of our last loads where you said, "Can you put any more in there?" Because we did just that. We had some like leftover pieces that like 6-foot pieces, whatever. So we just ripped them down to 4-foot pieces, jammed them in the front because we had some 11-foot pieces in the bottom, some 9-foot pieces in the middle, and then some 10-foot pieces on top. Just how it worked out. So we needed a spacer up front to support some of those pieces. So that's what we did. We just cut some pieces, ripped them in there. And that is a goal too. As we try to slowly progress into, my full-time, part-time job is where to go. And, I know not everybody likes slabs, and maybe someday it's not a thing anymore. So what we're looking at doing is slowly expanding into, I'd like to start actually making tables. And rather than doing just slab tables, farmhouse tables or thick top tables, is something I'd like to start doing too. And with the vacuum kiln, I can still dry that 10-quarter, 12-quarter rapidly, pretty quick, and actually start doing the kind of the treated table process. So that way, if you have that tree at your house, like we have a family friend who their family dropped the tree in the house that she grew up in one of the local towns. It was a tree she climbed as a child, and they just dropped it. So we just went, we got the wood, we're going to mill it up, and eventually going to make it into a table for her. That's going to be. That's
where the price tag starts to skyrocket when you've got the story. It's like the reclaimed barn wood. It's worth like $3 a board foot, but it's selling for $28 a board foot. Because it has the history and it has that known provenance. That's the cool stuff.
Right.
I think the part that people are missing with slabs and why we're seeing that market kind of start to fall a little is you don't have to use it as a slab. The beauty of it is you can buy a slab and you got perfect grain and color match, and you can get all your parts just like you would plywood. Think of the woodworking magazines, and there's that cutting diagram or imposed over a 4x8 sheet of plywood. You get all your parts, and it's all nested nicely into the plywood. You do the same thing with a slab. You can build that table or that cabinet, and all of your parts come out of that. You've got the ability to compose with the grain and really get a cohesive piece. So that being said, I mean, there's no reason that it has to be a live edge. In terms of filling your kiln, put a straight line rip on there and get it to perfectly fit. In other words, you're cutting your lumber to fill in the spots in the kiln, rather than filling it with stuff that is not going to be a product. Fill that space with something that you can actually make money on later. The other thing I wonder is sandwiching. Well, not necessarily on the bottom because you've got your rack on the bottom, but on top, using like a piece of plywood. Like get a 1-inch, not a 3/4, like a full 1-inch or what is that, 35 mil? I constantly.
I don't know that one.
Well, whatever. Because the people that make 1-inch thick plywood, they generally are marine plywood manufacturers, and they're all European. Okay. I think it's 35 mil, but that might be 3/4 of an inch. I can't believe I'm blanking on this now. But regardless, there are people that make 1-inch thick marine grade ply. And it doesn't have to be like the highest, high end meant for fiberglassing. It can be a lower quality Doug fir plywood, but it's going to be very stable. It's going to be water boil proof glue, which again is not that big of a deal in a vacuum kiln, but it's going to be like dead flat. And the beam strength of that 1 inch thick piece is such that you could put that as your cap and then run your bands around that. The other aspect is a lot of people just have a sacrificial piece. They know that top layer is just going to get trashed, and you just account for that, and you just know that's going to be screwed up.
Yeah, that might be phase 4 as we're on phase 3 of put some bars across the top, see what we get, and we're hoping we can kind of avoid that with some, with some springs and some tension on both sides equally. And and if not, then that might be the next phase. It's like, well, this piece is already going to be screwed. We just haven't got there yet.
Yeah, you could even build like a half-lapped torsion box type thing using scrap plywood, cutting out like 3-inch wide strips and half-lapping them into a grid to create like a torsion box, throw that on top. All kinds of fun things you can try. I'm just trying to get you. You said you wanted to get back into woodworking, so I'm giving you projects to build here along the way.
That torsion box is exactly what I was thinking of building, so that's good.
There we go. See, great minds. So we're talking about a month of turnaround in general. What is the variation? You said you'd ruined a fair amount of wood. What happened? What went wrong? And is it a particular species that you ruined more of?
I shouldn't say ruined. I should say it didn't come out to what I thought I was going to have. So I still have some cool pieces. They're just shorter now. So like I said, beech
and a
was
highly
the
cupped
first
slab.
one.
A really cupped slab ripped into narrow strips is a bunch of flat boards. So
right, and that's correct. Yeah, so we've definitely done that too. Like I said, I actually, one of the first ones we did, I just kept trying to make it into a slab and kept going small. I'm like, nope, we're losing that right, 15 inches right there. And then we have a nice board on the left side. So even a halfway decent desk size or whatever, because they're pretty big. And like beech was some of the first stuff. Well, our very first load was silver maple and box elder. And the iDry directions, personally, I think they can be improved a little bit. The gist is, what they sell is, you just put it in, hit start, presto, in a month you have wood. That's a little shortchanging, I think, the exact process. And, so the first time we put in stuff, just we wanted it out. So we put it in there, hit start, cranked the power as high as it went. And we got some good silver maple out of it, but that box out there sure moved on us. So, and cracked and split. And a lot of it was crotch figure anyways, so you're going to kind of, I guess, expect some of that. So like now I had up my website, we sold a couple pieces, but I took the rest down just because I don't want to just sell something. I want to sell you a 6-foot piece. And then you get home and realize you have a 3-foot piece that's a half inch thinner than you thought you're going to get out of it. So we have a large CNC, a 5-foot by 13-foot CNC. So we offer slab flattening services. So it didn't take us long to figure out, when you look at a board, you're like, whoa, like there's not going to be much left of that thing until we cut it. So the box elder was our first learning. And then I said the beech, we didn't support that. So that warped on us. So rather than nice 10-foot pieces, and that was beech is kind of funky wood other than being super heavy. There's just a lot of like bark inclusions and
it's
just kind of weird
stable
pieces.
It's got a lot of weird movement. The TR ratio is really wide, so it's going to move unpredictably is the kindest way I can think to put that.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, it's just there's a lot of stuff going on. It's cool looking wood. But it's just, that's heavy too. Super heavy. Yeah, so that, like I said, that moved on us because we just did support it. And I've had people tell, I've heard people say beech is a real pain to dry. So, But yeah, like this last load, we just kind of slowed it down, and we had had some elm that we're drying for him. We did a little custom drying, and so we just took it real slow. That's part of the thing, learning about is talking to other people and their processes, things like that. And we have some walnut coming up, which is not very. Not easy to find in Maine, especially around us. We're kind of the middle-ish. We're, an hour north of Portland by Augusta. So there's not a lot of walnut. So we have one coming up, and, that's not going to be a month. That's going to get babied all the way through and take it easy and probably add another, month and a half to 2 months drying it, depending on what the process is, just to go slow. So watching the temperature, watching the moisture content, and taking it easy. Well, so
just listen to my last episode. Walnut right now is up 22% in cost. We actually just we often think in terms of replacement cost. Anytime we quote material, we have to factor in what's it going to cost to replace that in our inventory. If there's 5,000 board feet of walnut, for example, going out, and say it's going out at $8 a board foot, how much do we take out of that profit in order to replenish that? So if it, say it costs $6 a board foot, we have to take $6 out of that, because we can't just be void in that material, because it doesn't do us any good, because lead time in the lumber industry is so long. You want to be able to replace that as soon as you sell it, so that the next phone call that comes in, you can say, I have that. Crazy thing is I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like, we'll just say replacement cost, or the cost of the material being sold was $5. Replacement cost was $9.50. It's like, holy crap. Like, this is a whole new world we're living in right now. It's just completely unpredictable, to the point where a lot of companies are saying, we'll honor a quote for 2 weeks. Then they said 7 days. Now it's down to like 48 hours. You call and you get a quote, we can only honor that for 48 hours because it's so volatile in the market right now. It's nuts. But the one thing you can count on with walnut is it's going to continue to rise, and it's probably not going to drop anytime soon. It'll drop slowly, but it's already a super, super popular wood. The resurgence of that particular species is just nuts. So take very good care of that walnut. That's retirement
that's part of the thing. Right. Well, that's the funny part. You're talking about like, oh, you have to have a replacement. Like, I don't have a replacement. Like, that was the one tree that I could find that somebody who's on Craigslist basically, or Facebook, was selling it. They basically just got to the point of saying, if you can come cut it, you can have it. And we work with a local arborist, so I called him up like, hey, want to come cut a walnut tree down? So I paid him to remove it, and we cleaned it up, and that's what the gentleman wanted. So the basically is have somebody, and there's houses all around. So he's talking about, oh yeah, you could probably drop it, and then the arborist shows up. He's like, there's no way any person could drop this tree. And, you have him shimmy up there and do what arborists do. And so, that's definitely the big difference is I don't have a new source. It's when an arborist gets to the point of cutting a tree down at somebody's residence. But, we have tons of maple, tons of oak, red oak, some white oak.
And that's what I think south. Of Maine. That's what we buy from Maine is maple and oak. Some northeastern white, but walnut. No, I think the furthest north I go for walnut is New York. Most of that's like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Ohio River Valley. That's the walnut.
Yeah, it's nice. So. Yeah, you see them. Yeah, and like I said, it's just some guy with a walnut tree in his backyard. That's pretty much where we got our walnut tree from. But like it's funny though. The second I post that online, like literally on the trailer, people are like, oh, I'll buy that. Yeah. Like we got a little bit further to go yet. Like I'm literally not even home with the log yet.
Yeah, I'm already scheming. How can I use my connection with Niles to get some of that walnut?
Right. They're already lining up. So it's good size. We have, I think it's 9 feet, 9.5 foot, 29 inches wide for the base. Right. So around here, you see some of the stuff people have out west. You're like, good gracious, like you can park a car underneath some of these trees.
Yeah, you start getting into the Calero species, and that's a whole other ball of wax. Very big tree. So that kind of brings me to my next question: is how you're going about sourcing this? Are you? Do people? It sounds like homeowners are calling you as well. Or is it pretty much just through the arborists, through the tree removal companies?
We try to figure out what the best way to do is. We started, but we ended up just doing the arborist route. Because like an example of, there's somebody on Facebook that was selling a red oak that they even said was over a power line for $3,500, which is, and they said, because they found the value online. I'm like, that's a standing tree. No, that's not a $3,500 tree, and it's over a power line. So no. So and that's the issue, is people's value of what a tree is worth, So
they Googled how many board feet are in a log. They found the log to board foot calculator, and then they found the board foot cost of red oak and multiplied. Right. There's another calculator.
Right.
Yeah, you need to go to that same website. right?
Right. Yeah, no,
the website that has that log to board foot calculator also has a calculator below it that says the value of the log, and it's usually like pennies per board foot in the log form.
Yeah.
You know, so if that calculator says you have 3,000 board feet in that log, that's a bit much. So then you have 3,000 pennies, basically.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's what we started looking at too. Is I started talking to some of the local foresters around us, and they're basically, I asked them what the heck they do with their 40-inch logs. Like, well, we sell that for pulp. But anything in this area, anything over 26 inches, they have to rip in half first with a giant chainsaw. So, so we work with some local arborists, and they're, some of the guys we work with, they're happy to get rid of it, and we, cut them a deal. But we're also picking up and disposing of 5,000-pound logs. They no longer have to pay someone to come pick up. So it's kind of everyone benefits. They don't have to spend hours cutting up a log that, most even pulp trucks can't even grab and pick up. So one of the ones we picked up from the local university's buys was a 9,000-pound red oak. So that's that massive one we've yet to cut.
Wow.
But they're big and heavy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the tough part with the individual person. When you try to deal with them is, they don't understand the process of taking that tree, literally the standing tree, to the board, and the cost and time and energy and expense and everything goes into preparing that. And a lot of times they just want too much money, and like that's not what we're doing here. So so like I said, that's where we end up working with arborists, and it seems a little better.
I actually work with a guy with a guy who used to fell trees. He had a tree service, and the insurance was so much that he eventually ended up closing the business. And kind of, it wasn't, it's not nearly as sob story as it sounds. It was more kind of, okay, this phase of my life is done. I'm going to do this. And now he's in the lumber business. But he just talked about, the insurance was such, because it was one of the most dangerous jobs that you can do is fell a tree. So the sheer cost of actually cutting down and taking that tree down, and the fact of the matter is that the safest way to take that tree down is not conducive to lumber. The safest way is to bucket on the way down. You don't want to drop that entire log. You got buried power lines, you got plumbing, you got all kinds of stuff that gets shattered when you drop a big log like that. And it's very, very dangerous at the same time to do it. Yep. So most of these guys are, cutting it up as they go down, because you're right. The next stop is a pulp mill, and they want it bucked into pieces, and that's the only way they can get it into the back of their dump truck is with, those small cookies or whatever. It's interesting.
Yeah, and that's the nice part too. After working with some of the arborists, we found some that we work very well with. They start figuring out what it is we're looking for, and they do what they can to keep them big. We have we picked up some Norway maple from a house in downtown Portland, Maine. So there's very, very nice houses all around each other, and they have a massive crane to pick them up. And he's like, sorry, he's like, I would have tried to get you some bigger pieces, but the crane is beeping and hollering over here. So like that's as much weight as it'll carry. So, so once in a while you get some 5-foot pieces when you wish you could have had 8 foot. It is what it is. So. And that same tree had an old laundry line, like a big old metal, I guess the turning wheel when you put the laundry line out. That was embedded in there probably 20 years ago. So we're gonna have to cut that one out from that same house. So it was a fun part of urban lumber.
Right. Well, I have to admit, I do laugh a little, because to me, Maine and urban are a bit of a contradiction in terms. But I suppose there are some.
At least like 4 cities, so that's not bad. It's all relative. It's all relative.
It just makes me laugh. I'm a Maine tourist, so what do I know? I go to the areas that are sparsely populated, and then I head up into the territories and go hang up in the county or whatever. That's my picture of Maine. I haven't spent a lot of time in Portland. I ran a 10K in Portland. That's about as much time as I spent in Portland. And that, to me, I think
we get a lot of our trees from Portland, so that's plenty urban for around here.
So we talked about Norway maple, silver maple, box elder, oak. What other species are you seeing up there, especially as they're coming out of yards? Yard trees could be anything. Black
locust. That's the thing. Something we're trying to do is expand into like actual municipalities. Like Portland has an awesome collection of trees. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And they're all labeled. They have a map of every tree the city has, so they have crazy trees. So it's just getting into that network, and they even have their own arborists. So,
I'm sure,
and so we try to work with them a little bit, and, they even admit that they don't do anything with them. They get chipped too. So, and Portland has their own sustainability office. Like, that's literally kind of like their thing, the city. And so it's just kind of funny, but it's probably just government at its best, trying to do stuff and doesn't get that far. So,
one wonders, though, as someone who works for the government, you might have an in. I don't know. Maybe.
It hasn't worked so far, so I'll let you know.
Still working on that.
Yeah.
No, I do know of people that have had success with that by tapping into the municipalities, because there are trees, that are on the city land, and they do have to be removed because they just get old. There's also trees where they have specific replanting procedures, and like the volume of trees taken down in a typical municipality is just staggering. And they're all replaced, but it's all part of their their silvicultural plan. Most of these, they have the reason they know all the trees with the map on them is because that's called silviculture. They know what they're planting, and they know that there will be a time when that has to come down. But I know several folks in the Midwest primarily that have had success. The good news is it's a cool story to tell. From your website right on the front page, it talks about. What is it? Carbon sequestered, board feet salvaged, weight diverted from the waste stream. That's the type of stuff. Yeah. That's the green sustainability message that a municipality just loves to say. Hey, we partner with, urban logging companies to make sure that our trees that are taken down are, being listed here and there. And I imagine that's quite a bit
my
of
sales
historical.
Pitch. I don't know.
Well,
no one calls me back, so.
Well, it is still a relatively new thing. I mean, and when you are talking about government. It's slow.
The one arborist I dealt with, and I won't say which city, but I approached him, and he sent me basically the Baltimore study on it. So he already had all the information. Well, basically, it's the same thing. Baltimore City was saying, hey, we have all these trees. What do I do with them? And they made their own urban lumber program. So he was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And then we tried talking multiple times, and it just dies. So yeah, I loved it. And they're definitely aware of it. But I think it just gets to the next step of, hey, can we do this? And then, and granted, COVID and everything else, and slowing things down. But trees are still coming down, and no one's doing anything with them. So,
what kind of capacity would you have for logs? You talk about this mill that you guys are working in. Say it works. That's the one thing I always talk about in marketing is what if it works? And suddenly the phone's ringing off the hook. Can we logistically supply the influx? So if the city of Portland, for example, says, okay, let's do this, Maine Urban Timber. Here are 27 logs. What could you handle something like that? Do you have a place for a log yard?
So Maine Urban Timber Company, got out of the company.
Sorry. Right.
So that's funny thing. That's why I haven't gone back to said city and, kept knocking on their door until somebody answers, because that's the exact issue. I'm like, oh boy. So we measure our capacity in time, not so much board feet, because that's what we deal in. And, that's definitely our biggest issue. And that's why I haven't been too pushy and saying, hey, we all like it. Let's do something. Because I'm concerned everyone all comes in at once and says, yeah, here you go. Here's 500 logs. Like, oh, I can take 4 of those. So then no one wants to talk to me anymore. So it's an interesting balancing act for, a full-time, part-time job of how you deal with that. And actually one of the things we're going to look at this year is Maine has a grant we're going to put in for basically recycling organic material to get a gooseneck log trailer for my truck. So that way we can actually pick up a larger capacity and transport. But we are my business partner, he has more property than I do. He has like 40 acres, and that's one of the things he actually just found out. He has a swath of land he didn't think was his. So it's a nice open area. It's perfect because it's like a perfect little log yard. We always thought like, oh, it'd be nice to have that, and then he found out it was his. So
all this time he's been yelling at the neighbor, I wish he would cut the grass on that lawn. Oh, that's mine. Whoops.
What a bum. No one mows that. Oh, that's me.
Well, it's interesting because I just got into this conversation with Matt on a recent episode of Wood Talk about you know, you have to be careful of the relationships you make, because suddenly they're like, yeah, here, come take some logs. And when you can't consistently take it off their hands, it sours the relationship. Like, you know, hey, Niles, you said you're going to help me out here. You know, you took 4 logs and now you won't come back, you know, and that actually ends up hurting you in the long run, because you can't consistently work with that person. That's a point that I don't think a lot of people think about.
Yeah, now it's part of the issue too. Like with our big mill, I mean, that was actually like one of the exact scenarios we had. Is, you know, we said we're going to go pick up some wood with one of the local arborists, and it was, you know, elm tree, and we basically picked up the bigger pieces, but we didn't take the smaller ones because we knew it would be a real pain, and we didn't specify that before. So we should have made that clear. But like now we have a, you know, traditional size mill, so we'll just grab it all, because now it is more feasible. Now we're looking for lumber also, you know, so we can do the 10 quarter, 12 quarter stuff. You know, it's just as we grow, you know, our capacity grows a little bit, we have that ability to do that. And we also realize what ticks people off on accident. So, you know, so we try to improve upon that and keep people happy. But yeah, I mean, that is the tough part with the arborist. You know, when you work with them, they don't want a log sit in somebody else's yard for a week till we go pick it up, because it's their name still attached to that tree until we come pick it up. So yeah, it's definitely a big timing thing, and getting there and get it quickly. And you know, it's especially at these silver maples that are 50 inches round. Like, I can't pick up more than 2 of those at a time, you know, at best, with a log arch trailer. So that's why. So we're looking at this 5th wheel with an actual grapple, so we can go grab multiple pieces. Because the winch, you know, that's the downside of that winch, or without modifying it further, what you need to do is the log arch trailer, the winch, it shoots straight out. So if you have a 40-inch log, that's going to go right in the middle of that log. You can't go up over it. So it gets in its own way. So you just reach capacity real quick without doing another point of contact for that winch to go through. So
this is like a whole new world of heavy and a whole new world of big. You know, you don't really realize like how heavy a tree is. And it's crazy stuff.
We bought an old crane. We bought it as a 1969 Silent Hoist Company crane, because we have these 4,000-pound logs, and even you put them on, we're basically, I don't know if you ever watched one of the videos of Matt unloading one of his logs before he has a little skid steer. He'd basically put a snatch block to the back on one side of the log, run the cable out and around the front of the log, and then hook it to the back, and it would just slowly push it off. And that was, I mean, it kind of worked. We tried to drag it off my bandsaw mill, but it literally dragged the bandsaw mill towards the log. Like, the log was by far heavier, so that didn't work. So then we were able to push it off, and then it was on there. That was it. Like, you're not moving that thing. You're not rotating it. If it's wobbly, too bad. Deal with it. Like, it's a 4,000-pound log. What are you gonna do about it? So we bought this crazy old crane, and that thing's the coolest, best tool we have, because you can move them now. We cut the top off one log, you just rotate it, flip it, and then now that's that flat part's on the bottom, and 3,000, 4,000-pound log, no deal. It took that 9,000-pound log. I wasn't impressed, but it did it. So that red oak we had. So
do you have pictures of that crane on your Instagram?
Oh yeah. Oh, you can't miss it.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh, that's so cool. How did I miss that?
And that's been in Maine its whole life. So it used to be at old pulp mills, and we bought it from a used equipment sales guy a couple towns north of us, and couldn't. Yeah, it's that thing is an awesome piece of equipment.
So the question
I live
is,
in a subdivision too, so my neighbors love me. They enjoy my crane and my sawmill and my driveway. So.
Have you given the crane a name? That's the important part. What do you call the crane?
I haven't yet. It says I think it says safety first on the back, or think safety, so people enjoy that.
Very nice. So I guess the last question that I wonder is, I was talking about this a couple episodes ago. I do too many podcasts. A couple episodes ago of one of the podcasts I do. I don't know what it was, but have you thought about air drying material? Because the bottleneck in your production process is certainly the kiln, but there's no reason why you can't air dry and then iDry later, or tap into the niche market of air dry. I know personally, I love air dried lumber. It's fantastic to work with hand tools. Since you've got 3 bandsaw mills, it seems like you can saw a lot of capacity. It seems like there's enough logs out there why not just start sawing boards, stacking and stickering and air drying, especially if, your partner has the land. As long as you keep them covered and you're level on the stack, seems like that might be the next iteration. So now you're offering not only kiln dried, which is unique, especially in slabs, but you still have the air dry capacity. Have you thought about that? And is it possible?
And that's actually we're actually just talking about that last night. So one of our big things, with being still a very young company, is we're playing catch up and we're learning so many different things at once. So as we get ahead with one thing, we screw something else up and kind of start over. So that is something we're looking for this spring, is to really now with we no longer have like, oh, what am I going to do with that log that's 15 inches beyond our cutting capacity? Like now we can cut everything. We can pick everything up. We have the ability to do. We have the equipment now. We have some of the knowledge base. We're starting to get some of the room to do it. So we're really going to make a big push this spring to actually cut this stuff and actually have it air dried, especially too, like I said, if rather than putting something in green, which I don't even know what the moisture percentage is because no meter goes above 40, is if I can put it in at 30 at 25%, I'm knocking a week or two off. And that's a whole nother cycle or two a year.
Well, it also dramatically reduces the stress. I know we air dry everything before it goes in the kiln. And that's what a lot of people are doing with the iDry. Talking to them, they try to do 4, 5, 6 months ahead of time. And I said, "Yep, someday I hope I do the same thing too." It's like, well, the kiln itself becomes like a finishing step at that point. You're almost there. You could pretty much sell it, but stick it in the kiln for a week, and it finishes the whole thing off.
We actually just put stuff in that we've had from our first load. We had some poplar that was my partner's stuff. So and we had some just some other silver maple pieces and some pine that somebody brought to us and decided not to pick up and said he was all set with it. So all this stuff was very low teens. It's just been sitting in our shop, and so we're like, hey, well, we don't have the red oak load going in next, so we just filled that up and just turned it on and we're running it this week, and it'll probably be done because it's all that stuff's seeing how everything else drops, and this is all thinner stuff too, thin material, 6/4 at best probably. So we're just running it through and gonna dry it and probably good in a week. So and that's definitely something we're doing. We just got to get there, and it's currently 15 degrees out, so it's cold right now. So we're a little behind on cutting, but we have some red oak going in this next kiln. It's been air drying for a little bit.
I heard Matt Cremona's eyes roll when you said it's 15 degrees outside. That's too cold to do anything. Come on. It's in Maine. You're supposed to be hardy.
It's just cold. I am, but my heater inside is really nice. So it's
right. When given the option, sure. Right. Well, I'll tell you, with some of the pine that I've seen coming out of the Maine woods, if you can start cutting 8/4, maybe 9/4 wide pine slabs, just call anybody who wants to build a Windsor chair. And now you've got seat blanks, which continues to be a difficult thing to source. And the beauty there is you can cross-cut them, into 24-inch lengths. So you end up with a 24 by 24, 8/4 to 9/4 white pine slab, and now you've got a Windsor chair seat. And there's a market right there that can be stacked in a corner somewhere. And you want to talk about drying fast. If you've cross-cut them into, cut them at 30 inches long, those suckers will dry so fast, and you can stack them uniformly, weight them so that they won't cup on you. And there's a whole new product line that, by the way, can be shipped. Listen to me.
Well, and I might steal Matt's idea too of the Rubo workbench tops, because like I said, it loves silver maple. I just haven't got that far. And I thought of it first too. He just created it first and marketed it first and did all that. I was there, but
it's a trend. And bringing this back to the lumber industry, this is a lumber industry update. It is a trend in the lumber industry as a whole because the internet has democratized lumber greatly. We used to be a very strict distribution channels, and you had wholesalers and retailers. And the internet has opened that up to anybody and everybody. And the margins on lumber have always been razor thin. And where the lumber yard or the sawmill is keeping their head above water and continuing in some instances to prosper is by adding greater value transformation into that. So, we take that log, you saw it into boards. The board is still a raw material. and raw materials are constantly, drive that price down, drive that price down. It's the people downstream that are turning that raw material into something that are really seeing the margins because of the value add that comes from that, or the specialized skill that comes from that. So more and more lumber yards, and the one I work for in particular, we don't actually sell that much rough sawn lumber anymore. We have a lot of rough sawn lumber. We have about 8 million board feet of rough sawn lumber on the yard. But we, maybe in a given week, if, 20 trucks leave the yard, 2 of them have rough sawn lumber, and the other 18 have something that's been milled. In other words, we're actually creating parts rather than selling raw materials. And more of the lumber companies that I sell to are doing that, where they're actually making a product. And it may not be a finished product. In some instances, it is a finished product. Some companies are just running those boards into decking material. So it's an S4S, E4E product, and it's being put down as a deck. Or they're cutting cookies and being sold as stepping stones, or they're being sold as tabletops. And go back to that Windsor chair seat blank idea. You are essentially turning a log into a product that is ready for a Windsor maker to start saddling right away. And it makes it a heck of a lot easier because you're going downstream and you're increasing your margins as you go downstream in the supply chain. So there's a lot that can be done there. And the more you start thinking about, we have this raw material, what would people want to do with that raw material? And you've already started with the slab flattening, because that's the first thing. What do I do with this 40-inch wide thing? And I joke all day long about I have a joiner plane. That's all I need. But using a joiner plane to flatten a 48-inch slab sounds a hell of a lot like work. You can do it. Yeah, it's just that's a lot of work. So that's the one thing that I would encourage you to think about is how can we transform what we have into something that is more accessible to a larger number of people, and by actually making custom sizes that fill a need, like a Windsor chair seat, or that's all I can think of right now for some reason. There's a bunch of other ideas, I'm sure, but you're the idea guy. Come up with that stuff, because I do think that is the future of the lumber industry. The supply chain as it existed 100 years ago, actually existed 5 years ago, because it was about the same 5 years ago as it was 100 years ago. That's not sustainable. And we've moved to an Amazon world where you order everything just in time and you expect it to show up next day overnight. And by the way, shipping is free. That is how a lot of customers are choosing to buy lumber now. And we have to be the ones to tell them, look, we need lead time on this. Like, this material has to be developed. We actually don't have that much material in stock, or we have to then saw it into boards. We have to rip it. We have to grade it. We have to dry it. All the things that have to happen before that product can be used, can be made into cabinets or whatever. And the solution has been, why don't we make cabinet parts? And why don't we sell the parts that then some carpenter or cabinet maker or whatever, or home builder can just slap it up as siding and go from there. And I think that's where everybody is having to move. Otherwise, the margins are just too razor thin, and you will always be in a situation where there's not enough time. Sure, there are logs, but we couldn't possibly take all the logs because we still have to saw them into boards, and they still have to be dried and all that fun stuff. So, parting thoughts, I think.
Yeah, and that's, kind of the slow ideas, kind of like you're saying, is if when that phone call comes and says, I want all this, or come pick this stuff up, can I keep up? So that's why I'm trying to be methodical with the slow expansion of what we're doing. And like I said, the up and coming month, we're going to basically, in the mill that we're in, almost double our space. There's a company that's moving out of the spot that's basically a budding wall, and I'm going to bring my wood shop that's in my garage right now down there. So that way I can actually start expanding and make tables, make furniture for people. So as needed, because now I don't have the ability to do that. I can't bring a slab or even a large tabletop home, and do that in my garage. I just don't have the physical room to do it. So that's the next step.
If it's too cold to run the mill, you might as well be doing something in the wood shop, right?
Yep, with a heater because it's warm. So
very cool.
Yeah. Well, so that's awesome. The plan.
Well, this is particularly exciting. As I said, one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk to you is because the business is so young. And you're also kind of benefiting. Well, a lot of us run into this with the internet now. There's so much information out there. and you can very quickly come up to speed. But then you also can very quickly get overwhelmed, and there's this learning process along the way. So I think it's particularly interesting to watch just how far you guys have come in such a short time, but just how much further you can go. I think that's particularly exciting. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we're excited.
Well, I think we can wrap it there. But just to kind of sum up, folks, it's Maine Urban Timber Co.com, not Maine Urban Timber, Maine Urban Timber Company. There's some incredible pictures on their Instagram page. The website is quite well done, although I will say you have to update the fact that you have a greater sawing capacity. It still says you can only saw 45 inches, but you know.
Oh. Yeah. Well, we'll update that tonight.
There you go. You got to get right on that. But as far as, somebody who's interested, I don't think you guys ship, right? How could you? It's local pickup.
We haven't got that far. I mean, I think it's going to be very cost prohibitive. One of our first loads, somebody from Florida said, "Hey, how much to ship that?" I'm like, "You probably double the cost of that slab and then add some money to it, and I think you'll be getting close." Like, oh, it's like, yeah. It's like, sorry, it's just we have to get there eventually. We just aren't.
Understandable.
So,
and it may be there's another product line idea. I remember talking to the guys at Bell Forest about this specifically. And they were very keen to say that, we could bring in 10-foot boards, but we can't ship them. So we just don't. Everything, if they bring in boards, they want them to be in multiples of 6 feet because they can ship 6 feet. So they either buy 6 to 7-foot boards or they buy 12 to 13-foot boards, because that's
everything we would do would be some kind of freight, and it's a less than full load freight. So you're going to pay out the nose for it. So like I said, that's why I just haven't gotten that far yet because it'll be very expensive if someone wants me to ship something. So
what I find particularly interesting though is like if we go to your website and you look under the shop, like there's almost nothing there. Like you sell out almost as quickly as this stuff goes online. So
that's why people keep saying it's like, oh, do you have anything that's not on your website? Like, unfortunately not. Like this is our third loadout, and I haven't started putting stuff out yet because we're just haven't physically uploaded stuff yet. It's only been out for a couple of days, but people are like, dude, do you have anything else? Like, I don't. Like, it's just gone.
That's pretty cool.
Because we do like a lot of stuff, Facebook Marketplace, and just kind of do a generic ad, and people they just keep snagging it and go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, into that respect, is it necessary at this point to actually consider shipping? But I think
at this
for
point,
those that are. New England is a relatively small place. For the listeners that are in the New England area, Maine Urban Timber Company is somebody you might want to look at. But you also probably want to move quick because these things are moving like hotcakes. So very cool.
Tell people, sign up for our newsletter because I said we'll send out an email blast when new stuff's available so you can get the first crack at it. So because otherwise, take long.
I think I saw something like a popover that like jumped up and said like a PDF on why to use slabs or something like that. So,
how to buy a slab. There you go.
How to buy a slab. That's what it was. Very cool. Very cool. The marketer in me loves when I see stuff like that. So
totally worth it. Worth signing up right there.
Niles, I do appreciate the time. Really interesting stuff. I was particularly interested to talk about that iDry kiln, and I think I might need to connect with you again in the future on that because this is something that I get a lot of questions about, and I don't have the experience with it, and because they are generally for operations like your size, and I'm used to working with companies that are quite a bit larger, I don't know too many people who are using it, but I do find it particularly interesting that it's not as plug and play as they make it seem, because I didn't really believe that anyway. So I'm kind of glad to hear that my suspicions were correct, that there's a bit of a learning curve there, and it's important to recognize that you can't just buy a kiln and shove lumber in it, hit go, and come back later. So,
you can. Stuff. You can.
You can, but then you just made firewood.
10-foot boards turn into 6-foot boards. So, yeah.
Well, but then you can ship those. So there you go.
Yeah. Perfect. Just what I was looking for.
Anyway, well, again, thank you, Niles. If anybody has questions, they can reach you on your website. Check out Niles' Instagram page. Lots of fun stuff. Check out the pictures of the crane. It's very cool. And I'll tell you what, once this COVID thing ends, I'm going to be heading back up to Maine. I'm going to come visit because I got to come. I want to come drive the crane. Let's just put it that way.
You betcha.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And you have a great evening.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate having me on.